Hi everyone, Leanne here from Jaded Blossom, and it is time for the September release hop. Hey, so I'm using Jaded Blossom's brand new Gnome Dies Wizard add-ons, their Stay Magical stamp set, the Stay Magical outline dies, their stitched arch dies, their card mat dies, and their magical swirl stencil. And you can watch me put together, or actually I did this ink blending on the release and review video, so you can go watch that. But everything that I used will be listed in my blog post. And then I put this guy together on the assembly video for the wizards, so check that out. So on the inside, I'm going to add a 1-inch strip of paper from Doodlebug, Sweet and Spooky 12-inch paper line. So that is on, I'm putting it on the inside of an A2 size card base, 4.25 by 11, scored at 5.5 inches. And that's Paper Trank white cardstock. I'm a little challenged here getting it lined up. But I end up getting it on there eventually. There we are. And then I will trim off that overhang with a pair of scissors. And I just think this turned out super cute. It's a fun little card. I'm going to add this little wand that is from the Gnome Dies Wizard add-ons. This is American Crafts brown cardstock. And I'm going to stick that in the lower right-hand corner. And I'm going to add in the magical swirl stencil. It's just so fun, right? And I'm going to ink blend this little magic coming out of the coming out of the wand. This is Distress Oxide ink in Dusty Concord. I'm just going to ink that in just lightly. I don't care that it goes over the fold. Isn't that fun? I just think it looks super fun. Now I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the inside from that Stay Magical stamp set. And I'm going to ink that in VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink. There we go. It's time to celebrate with a sprinkle of magic, right? Now I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the outside, or this is going to be for the outside of my card. And this is on Winter Wisteria cardstock from Paper Tray Ink. And it says, "You are wonderful." I'll stamp that a couple of times. And now I'm going to cut it out with the outline die. I always say you don't have to have the outline dies, but they sure make life easy, right? So I'm going to stamp that tape that down so I can cut it out. And now this is paper from that same Sweet and Spooky 12-inch paper line from Doodlebug. And I cut that out using Jaded Blossom's card mat dies. And I'm going to stick that down onto my card base with my ATG tape. There we are. Oops. Now all my die cutting was done with my Anna Griffin Empress machine, like I always say, doing all the same things I always do. So I'm just going to line that up in place. There we are. And this little blended background that I took, this is paper from Asuka Studios Sparkly Sky. I cut it out, or I ink blended that little swirly stencil with the magical swirl stencil with Distress Oxide ink and Dusty Concord. And then I used Nouveau glitter paste and Moonstone over top of it. And you can watch me do that on the release and review video at the end. So I'm just going to stick down my little arch. So I waited until it was dry, obviously, before I used the arch die to cut it out. It does kind of flatten your embossing paste, but it's fine, like it's sparkle paste. It works great. So I'm going to add in my little staff on my little wizard, and then I'm going to kind of, clamp it in place so it dries. And then I'm going to pop up this entire guy with Stampin' Up! Dimensionals. So, I kind of like to cover things in dimensionals. I guess I could have cut this out, but So like I said before, you could watch me put this cute little guy together on the Gnome Dies Gnome Dies Wizard add-ons assembly video. But, it was pretty straightforward. There were really no snafus in putting these guys together. I didn't have to, contact Michelle or Candace and ask them, what is this little piece for? It was very intuitive, so that's awesome. So I am just adding on all this dimension There we go. And that way, you know, when it goes through the mail, it's not going to get squashed. Everything's nice and level. And, you know, it works out. So I'm just going to kind of pop this all up as much as I can and as level as I can. There. And I just need to put something behind the, behind the staff part. So I'm going to trim down a piece so I peeled off all the backing. And now I'm going to add this guy to my little arch. These little stitched arches are really handy, right? It gives you a nice home for your little gnomes to sit. There we go. And I just think it's super cute. And I'm going to add my sentiment, "You are wonderful." I cut it out a few times more in some white scrap cardstock. And I'm just going to try and level up the end where it goes off my little wizard. So I'm just going to layer it up on another piece just so it's a little bit thicker. And then I actually do it a couple of times. Sorry guys, just using the white cardstock. And then I cut off the end off some of these other pieces just to kind of prop up the end of this sentiment where it goes off my little wizard. So I'm just getting off any of those little slivers that you get from die cutting. And I'm just going to trim off the end of these. And I'm going to build up the end of it so, you know, it kind of keeps things level where it goes off. And this was really simple to do. That's another nice thing about having the outline dies for these sentiments. Like you could eyeball it, but why, right? Why make things hard on yourself? So I'm just layering these up. And once I'm happy, I'm going to add two little foam squares from Stampin' Up! To the end. Once everything's all lined up, and then I will glue it down on top of this little wizard. So this was a really simple card. Like once everything was assembled and the ink and the stenciling was done, you know, it was pretty easy. But there it is. So I'm taking these shape sprinkles from Doodlebug. These are Holiday Magic. And I'm going to add a few of these white sparkles to my background just for fun. I think it adds a little something, a little bit of shine, right? I already have sparkle, you know, from that Magical Swirl stencil. But, you know, why not add a few of these little sparkly things, you know, in my background. And what it does is it just adds a little something, and I'm using up some of my Doodlebug products, which is always a good thing. I'm going to add a couple of these little dots in the lower left-hand corner because why not, right? I have them, might as well use them. And there we go. I just think he turned out super cute. And there it is, right? So thank you so much for stopping by. Be sure to hop on over to the Jaded Blossom blog, Be Inspired by the Team, the Jaded Blossom store to get shopping. And thanks for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. Make sure to come back again soon. Bye, everybody.